Chauvin trial.
Derek Chauvin guilty on all 3 counts in the killing of George Floyd.
Today was a good day for African Americans.
Is it going to change anything?
We're going to hold you accountable no matter who you are.
It's a great time to reflect and see how far we've come in the last year.
Gives hope and precedence for these type of verdicts to be the norm.
I would love for this to be the last time, but it ain't gonna be. And so what do we do next? How do we deal with this next?
Good morning and welcome into a special edition of First Take. Today we will discuss the verdict that will echo through time, the verdict where the real work begins. Stephen A. Smith, Max Kellerman, I'm Molly Karen Rose. Let's get right into it, gentlemen. Former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin found guilty on all charges in the murder of George Floyd. Chauvin was found guilty of second-degree unintentional murder, third-degree murder, second-degree manslaughter by a jury Tuesday for his role in the murder of Floyd last May. Floyd's death in the video, which showed Chauvin kneeling on Floyd's neck for about 9 minutes, became a catalyst for the sports world's racial and social justice movement last summer. Chauvin faces a 40-year maximum sentence for the second-degree unintentional murder conviction, a 25-year sentence for the third-degree murder, and a 10-year sentence for second-degree manslaughter. A jury of 6 white, 4 black, 2 multiracial jurors deliberated for 10 and a half hours over parts of 2 days before rendering a verdict. Stephen A., your reaction to this historic verdict?
Well, first of all, I would like to say that while I understand why people are in a very celebratory mood, I am not one of those people. George Floyd is not coming back. He's dead. He was killed by this officer. He'll never be around his family or his loved ones again. He's not coming home. And so because of that, for me, while I understand why people would be in the streets in Minneapolis and beyond celebrating, I'm just not of that mindset. I do love the fact that the sentences came down, that he was found guilty on all charges. I did love seeing his family celebrate, because my heart goes out to them and what they've had to endure over the last year and what they'll have to endure forever going on with their lives without George Floyd in it, at least physically. So we all know that. And while I'm glad for them because they seemed incredibly happy with what transpired, we also understand what comes along with it for them. So whatever way they feel, they are entitled to whatever emotions that they have. And all of us, I think, easily supports them in that regard. With that being said, I'm paying attention to the particulars, and what I would implore everybody is not to take their eyes off the ball. It's incredibly important that we understand what transpired yesterday. Derek Chauvin was convicted. Unintentional second-degree murder, third-degree murder, manslaughter charges. It says 40, 25, and 10 years respectively. That adds up to 75 years. From my understanding, the sentencing, his time in jail will be served concurrently, not consecutively. So what people out there may not understand, some people may not understand, and for the purposes of my opening comment, Max and Molly, I think it's important to explain to people that may not understand. When you are sentenced and your sentence is to be exercised consecutively, that means every charge is separate and you have to serve one charge. And then after that, you have to serve time for the other charge. And then after that, you got to serve time for the other charge. When it's concurrent, it's perceived as being one crime. Essentially, you might have been found guilty for the 3 charges, but because they're served concurrently, you only get one. You're only being penalized for one charge. Now, I've read reports, and maybe I'm wrong here, but I was reading one report from the Associated Press. They said obviously the prosecution is going to go for the stiffest penalty imaginable, and the stiffest charge is obviously the second-degree unintentional murder, which carries a 40-year sentence. Well, in the state of Minnesota, doing my research and looking stuff like that up, lo and behold, you hear stuff along the lines that says, okay, well, that basically means the judge will give him 20. You're also in the state of Minnesota, because it's a federal crime, it's not a state crime. Since it's a state crime, not a federal crime, I'm sorry, okay, not only do you get to 20, but in all likelihood, you only serve 2/3 of that time. So we're talking about anywhere from 10 to 12 years, conceivably, that Derek Chauvin could end up spending in jail. Because remember, he's left it up to the discretion of the judge. It's at the judge's discretion what amount of time this individual, Derek Chauvin, ends up getting sentenced to. The judge could give him the stiffest penalty imaginable, or he could cut it in half. And ultimately, usually in the state of Minnesota, they say you only serve 2/3 of it. We got dudes that was dealing marijuana that spent more time, more than 10 years in jail. And this dude might end up getting something like that. So it's incredibly important that we understand that everybody's eyes need to be on the ball. Yeah, he was found guilty. And that's step one. Justice appears to have been served. I lean more along the lines of what LeBron James tweeted when he brought up the word accountability. Because you're talking about true accountability and not being able to wiggle your way around it. Even when he goes to jail, everybody says he ain't got nothing to worry about. Ain't nobody gonna get at him because they ain't gonna put him in general population. I mean, you hear all kinds of stuff. So I'm kind of wondering, okay, what's going to really happen here? My eyes on the judge. Because now that he has been found guilty by the jury, I want to see what the judge is going to do as it pertains to his sentencing. Because if you sentence that man to 10 years, 12 and a half years, 20 years, it's your discretion. In the state of Minnesota, they usually serve about 2/3 of their sentence if they had no previous criminal record, which he did not. And he was a police officer. These are the kind of things we have to pay attention to, because on far too many occasions, particularly as black people, and we have every right to feel this way because we've endured so much throughout our history. Symbolic victories, while significant, which is something that Max has pointed out accurately so, in the past, I'm saying it's not enough anymore. Symbolism, symbolic gestures, symbolic victories, it ain't enough. This man has to pay. He should be in jail for the rest of his natural life. Those 3 officers, one that kept the spectators at bay, the other 2 that assisted even though they didn't have their knee on George Floyd's neck, but they was holding down his body. They need to do jail time too. Their trials come up in August. I'm looking at all of that. And I'm looking at the judge, who also during the trial, because Representative Maxine Waters showed up this week and flew from the nation's capital to Minneapolis and essentially encouraged people. She didn't say violence or anything like that, but she was encouraging people to make noise and to be confrontational. The judge was on the record and said to the defense, you obviously have grounds for an appeal to completely, for a mistrial, to completely dismiss all of these charges. That's what the judge said. And this is the same judge that has the discretion of deciding whether or not this man serves the maximum amount of time or the minimal amount of time. These are the things that I'm looking at. So again, I'm very happy with the guilty verdict. It was necessary. I'm glad it happened. But that's only part 1. Part 2 is what I'm talking about. And part 3 is people not forgetting that before George Floyd was killed, was murdered, there was a kid, a white kid, that went into a church in South Carolina, shot 9 people, killed them while they were in prayer. The police, after a nationwide manhunt, got him, stopped him at Burger King for some food before bringing him to jail alive and cuffed. George Floyd passes away after. Somebody else shows up in Colorado who wasn't black, kills 10 people. Somehow he was arrested. But Dante Wright is killed after George Floyd. Before George Floyd, after George Floyd. These things still happen. They're still happening. Let us not take our eyes off the ball. Let us address policing and criminal justice reform. Let's make sure we keep our eyes on the judge, who has the discretion of making this maximum or minimum. The job is not finished.
Yep.
It's not finished.
Stephen A., I just want to add one thing to the sentiment you just said. If he was to serve